it's going. Let's make sure that the sound is good. Sound. Okay, it should be good. So, welcome to Mother Tongue, which is a curatorial project that I'm starting. And basically, it's a series of conversations where I'll be going to different artists' houses and studios and kind of having a discussion about their process and what they're interested in. What makes it different than an artist talk is it's really supposed to be a conversation where everyone gets involved. So we want this to be a space where everyone can share. So if you have something to share at any point, just feel free to talk, raise your hand, just speak up, whatever you want. And Ona's our first artist that we're going to her house and talking about her art. And yeah, so Ona will explain her artwork and we have some questions. We'll just be having this conversation. So do you want to start, Ona,
Sure.
about your work?
Well, thank you everyone for coming and showing interest. It's great to have you all here. So I am a half Finnish. Corinne and I are both half Finnish. Our mother was from Finland. And so I really take a lot of inspiration from Finnish history and symbolism and mythology in my work. Specifically, there's a book called the Kalevala, which is the Finnish national epic. And it has all of these mythological stories in it about kind of representing Finnish history and the creation story and a lot of animistic beliefs from ancient Finland. And so I take a lot of inspiration from those stories, and specifically kind of there's a whole theme about the underworld and kind of moving between the living and the world of the dead and spirits. And so that's a theme that I'm really interested in. I'm kind of exploring in moving in between those two realms per se.
Yeah. So today's discussion will be kind of centered around the importance of mythology in people's lives and also kind of the disappearance of it in our current day and how it's important to Ona and how she really uses it in her everyday life. And yeah, so obviously we're sisters, so we talk a lot about these things. And over the summer we took a trip and we were talking a lot about how it can be really difficult to explain yourself. And Ona was saying how she felt like she could never explain herself through words. And we just thought it was interesting of we kept on questioning, will anyone ever fully understand what you're trying to say? And that was kind of like a theme, I feel like, throughout our trip, because we saw a lot of cool art and we were just reading a lot of cool things, and I think we were just getting to the root of how do you communicate things. So I have there's these little postcards over there. You can grab them on your way out if you haven't already. But there's this one quote, and I'm just going to read the second half where there's italics, where Ona responded to something that I wrote, and she said, "As Corinne was writing this, I thought about why language may be such an important form of self-representation and the way I think about it. We're all just souls bouncing around in a body and have all come from a place that long predates the invention of language. It is pretty amazing that humans developed the ability to bounce words off one another and create meaning in such complex and diverse ways. But language has not always been. Maybe wherever it is we all come from hasn't either, but it is much, much older, and that is the place I feel most connected to in life. That is what my art is about, going home. But how wonderful that some of us find home in images, while others do in words or numbers or equations. Something calls to us all." So that leads to the first question of, does anyone want to share what is their form of expression? Is it through image, words, or something else?
I like to work with textiles.
Cool.
I do music.
I also do textile work.
Is there something about textiles that what draws you to textiles?
I think it's interesting that textiles can also be a functional piece as well, and I feel like there's so much craft involved, and a lot of it is for functional purposes, but I think kind of towing that line of just pure visual expression as well is really interesting, because it kind of forces you to think about what you're making more than just, you know, if it's a garment, like how that's, you know, you need a shirt, but like also what did you want to say with this shirt as well. So I feel like it's a very, it does, I'm trying to like answer that, or force myself to engage with that question more of like what I'm trying to say when I make something that's a textile. And even if it is functional, maybe it could also be a form of expression that's like intentional too. And you know, like going beyond just following a pattern of a craft or something, how you can like weave, or like may literally weave, or just metaphorically weave in meaning into that too, or just expression into that. So I feel like it's a very interesting form of art, because it could just simply be because you need an item to perform a function, or it could be just a visual expression. So I like that it has those two sides, and I think it's fun to play around with that idea as well.
Cool. Does anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I take photos, and I feel like that, like including symbolism and stuff in that, is like helpful in like communicating emotionality. That's how I usually feel like, or that's what I feel like can be expressed through photos for me. But also I think it's really interesting, like how that's communicated, and like, I don't know, the idea of the photograph like being real or not, since it's like what's in frame and what's not, and like how that's like obscuring your communication, you know.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So, so Owen and I were talking a lot about the impact of mythology, and what it has on art making and the human experience, and so Ona will explain a little bit this and how it relates to her artwork, and also all of these here are Ona's. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, well, I find like mythology in general, I've always been really interested in like kind of fantastical storytelling. You know, as a kid I was always really interested in like fantasy movies and books and literature and media. And so I've always kind of been interested in this idea of like the things that aren't real, and experiencing things that we might necessarily not get to experience in reality. But I think that mythology encompasses all of those things. And one of the authors that has been really impactful in my own life has been Joseph Campbell, who some of you may know. He's a comparative mythologist, and he studies mythologies from all over the world and kind of saw how all of them were very similar in a lot of ways. Like no matter what part of the world you came from, like they all included very similar themes and tackled very similar issues. And so he kind of spoke about, you know, why humans created stories and mythologies, and how, you know, we really understand our existence and our world through storytelling. And he had this whole idea about how, you know, there's this whole thing about like people are questioning the meaning of life, but he was like, I don't think that's really it at all. I think what we're really questioning is how to make the outside world feel compatible with our inner world and what we really feel on the inside. And that's what I feel like all artists really do, and that's something that I try to convey as honestly as I can through my work. But I just wanted to read this quote that he had about kind of the definition of mythology, or the role that it plays in our lives. And so he wrote that the life of a mythology derives from the vitality of its symbols and metaphors, delivering not simply the idea, but a sense of actual participation in a realization of transcendence, infinity, and abundance. Indeed, the first and most essential service of a mythology is this one, of opening the mind and heart to the utter wonder of all being. And the second service, then, is cosmological, of representing the universe and whole spectacle of nature, both as known to the mind and as beheld by the eye, as an epiphany of such kind that when lightning flashes, or a setting sun ignites the sky, or a deer is seen standing alerted, the exclamation, "Ah," may be uttered as a recognition of divinity. And so that's what I feel like art making really is just like trying to recognize divinity in your own life. And yeah, that's kind of my approach.
Yeah. Do you want to share how you got interested in mythology, how you started reading it?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, like I said earlier, just like very interested in stories, and you're very much representing Star Wars tonight, which is a great, I was like, this is very on topic, because that's a great example of mythology and how that's kind of perpetuated into like modern culture. But that's something that we may not, something that Joseph Campbell talks about a lot, is how we've kind of lost connection to nature and to an idea of religion that like really serves our lives. You know, there was in pre-modern times, religion was very ritualistic. You know, there was a ritual for every form of transformation in your life. You know, like when you were born, when you hit adolescence, when girls get their periods for the first time, marriage, all of these things in some cultures are still very prevalent, but I think on a larger scale, that's something that we're really missing from the human experience these days. And so he speaks a lot about that, and that's kind of what really interests me about mythology and its purpose in understanding our own lives.
Yeah. Does anyone here want to share their experience with how they connect with mythology? Do you think it's something beyond yourself? And what is your experience with it?
Or religion or ritual practice, or any of those things.
I don't know, I guess for myself, a lot of it has been through more like adolescent or like YA forms of media when I was like a really little kid, like obviously like Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, and all of these pretty well-known, I guess, like forms of literature that probably draw a lot on longer forms of, or like older forms of stories that we probably don't know about super obviously. But I think like the medium of like a more accessible literature, or even like, I'm sure there's like tons of illustration, for example, that pertains to that, I think has been a way for it to like continue to be seen, at least in my life, and like maybe less so in my adulthood. But I guess I think it's really interesting that you yourself are using illustration as the kind of medium for that, when and as like a, I don't know, less of a like, I'm gonna like paint this whole thing in a cathedral that can only be seen by like this like, I don't know, like level of man who has a specific role in the church who can access it. I'm saying about that, but like, I don't know, I guess I think illustration seems to be a more like accessible and widespread form of art that can communicate this message, and I think that's how I've experienced it in my life thus far.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it's something I think about a lot because I studied art history in college, is how, like, for most of human history, art was really a form of religion, and it was really only used in religious contexts. And, you know, it was used in functional context as well, but in the way that we understand it, but not so much maybe then. It wasn't really thought of as, like, high art, but, like, art was really just used to, like, tell these religious stories. And I think it's really interesting that, like, in our society we've kind of evolved out of that, which I think is a wonderful thing. I'm also really interested in the art of people who kind of, like, want to bring that back in a way, or, you know, they continue to express their religious beliefs through art.
That reminds me of how I feel like modern Christian churches have zero art involved, and they've actually, like, totally divorced themselves from, like, the original, almost, you know, theatrical, aesthetic parts of Christianity in a different way, and then art has kind of evolved, like, separate from religion. But yeah, that reminds me of that, and it makes me sad because I feel like my enjoyment of religion is through art and visuals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's like if you step into, like, a modern church versus a, like, I don't know, I guess, like, a super old, like, Renaissance-y church, like, the feelings also are just, like, so different. And, like, I'm not a religious person, but it just, like, feels different. Like, I, like, feel like I could, like, I don't know, I just, like, feel a sense of, like, something bigger than me when I'm, like, in an older church. Like, I don't know.
Versus, like, an auditorium, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like making material items used to be a form of worship in a way, like allowing yourself to dedicate yourself to making this thing that you feel will bring you closer or to represent some sort of connection. And I feel like our idea of material value has changed so much that now we kind of see art as, like, almost a form of, like, evil in a way, or like the perpetuation of some sort of, like, oppressive force. And I think that kind of makes me think a lot about, like, why has the church kind of separated itself so much, and I think it is kind of this association of values with art that has really shifted.
I guess also, though, I do think there's, like, a much longer history of art being at odds with religion, and I mean, like, even if you go back to, like, whatever, like, the golden calf in the Bible and stuff, where it is, like, a separate object to worship through, was seen as a form of, like, blasphemy or idolatry, and, like, something that's replacing God. And I think since we're in America, I guess we have a lot of Protestant churches, which are, like, probably mostly off of that branch that was like, Catholicism is crazy with all their stained glass windows, and, like, and, like, kind of a disavowal of, like, material goods and things like that. That often led to this very, like, kind of, like, plain, or what used to be a plain practice. And now it's funny because it's turned into, like, mega church, like, the opposite of, like, some kind of entirely separate other, like, theatrical experience. But it is, like, there is this long history too of also, like, the Greeks and, like, Plato writes so many things about how art is evil and, like, the worst sin ever, especially, like, representations of God. So I think there's always been kind of this contentious history, I guess, in the relationship between art and religion.
Ooh. Okay. Do you want to share your Carl Jung quote or no? I have it in my notes. Carl Jung quote.
Carl Jung quote. Well, yeah, he talked about, I just thought the way he wrote about kind of our divorcing ourselves from nature was really beautiful. So he said, as scientific understanding has grown, so our world has become dehumanized. Man feels himself isolated in the cosmos because he is no longer involved in nature and has lost his emotional, unconscious identity with natural phenomena. And these have slowly lost their symbolic implications. Thunder is no longer the voice of an angry god, nor is lightning his avenging missile. No river contains a spirit, no tree is the life principle of a man, no snake is the embodiment of wisdom, and no mountain cave the home of a great demon. No voices now speak to man from stones, plants, and animals. nor does he speak to them believing they can hear. His contact with nature has gone, and with it has gone the profound emotional energy that this symbolic connection supplied. And I feel that. I feel that very deeply in my own life. And I feel like most of us probably do, especially living in New York City, it's like, we got some parks and stuff, but I feel like, especially now in the political context as well with like climate change and everything, it's very evident that we no longer revere nature as we once did.
The next question is, do you feel satisfied with your art?
I mean, I do feel satisfied. Well, like you said about like making, like how it's a form of worship. That's how I feel about making art, is that that's like my form of connecting to a higher power. And so I do feel satisfied when I feel that I've done it to the best of my ability. But where I think sometimes I don't feel satisfied is just like the struggle of actually like making something, like actually like doing it, which is a lot easier said than done a lot of the time.
Yeah, totally. Another like inspiration for this project was actually through an experience that you went through when you were working at Leslie's studio, and like you said that each person would like have a slideshow of like their work, and you guys got to talk about like your work, and you said that was kind of the first time you could talk about your work to maybe to people who aren't your friends or family, and you said that was such a nice experience and a really helpful experience, and that's kind of why I wanted to create this project, was because I felt like artists couldn't have like really a space where they could explain things or just like talk about certain things, so that's kind of where this like second half of this conversation is turning into, is what are your insecurities in your art making?
I mean, definitely just like making the work, but also I feel like there's so much pressure almost to like be an artist and to put your work out there all the time and like really make something of what you do. For me, it's just like I want to do it because it makes me feel good, or it makes me feel connected to something. It makes me feel connected to myself, and I feel like that's enough. But I think, a lot of the times that's looked down upon, especially in today's society where like it's so easy to like post all your stuff on Instagram or whatever and like constantly or the whole idea of like making your hobby like monetizing your hobby or whatever. It's like just do the thing to do it. But I mean, I would be curious to hear everybody else's experiences with that.
I think I feel most satisfied when I'm really doing something for myself and like really tuning into the process and like the act of my hands working with the material, and like as soon as I'm like, oh, I should take a photo of this to share, like it just starts to feel worse and worse and worse. And I think that there's this pressure, like what's my mark on the art world gonna be, or what do I bring that's new to the medium, or what am I doing the way everyone else has done it, like really successfully. And I think kind of the best things happen when you break away and just do it for yourself, but it's so hard to do today.